Just 2 days after the lavish wedding I had poured all my money and energy into, my son-in-law showed up at my door with a man who claimed to be a notary. He held his head high, smug, his voice as cold as a blade. "This house has already been sold. You'd better prepare for the nursing home." My heart twinged for a moment, yet the corner of my lips curled into a quiet smile. Because what he didn't know was that, just before the wedding, I had already sent the most crucial recording into the hands of the police. I looked him straight in the eye and calmly said, "Oh, sold already? Perfect. Because I also just gifted you something, a complete file, now sitting with the police." And with that single sentence, the entire game flipped instantly. Don't look away, because what comes next is a dramatic unmasking you'll want to see to the very end. And beyond that, it carries a lesson that could one day save your own family. At 3 a.m, the VIP lounge of the airport was nearly deserted. Cold, fluorescent lights spilled over rows of worn black leather chairs, creating an atmosphere that felt hollow, so different from the elegance a wedding night was supposed to carry. The echo of the loudspeaker announced early flights, filling the empty space with reminders of departures. On the table sat a half-finished box of donuts beside a paper cup of vending machine coffee, still giving off a faint trace of steam. David Cole leaned back, his iPad glowing in the dim light, the screen frozen on a real estate valuation page. He took a sip of coffee, then turned to me with a smirk laced in mockery. "Bill, a house that big, with nothing but a ticking clock for company, is such a waste. You and Emily need a place to begin your married life. And your father's house? Perhaps that's the perfect fit." The words struck the silence like metal against stone. I set my passport down, the sweet taste of wedding cake from 2 nights earlier turning bitter in my mouth. That house wasn't just a structure, it was the home I had built with my own hands 20 years ago. The place where I carried my wife across the threshold. The place where my daughter Emily had taken her very first steps. "David," I said evenly, though my hand clenched tight around my boarding pass, "that's my house." Emily sat between us, nervously twisting her new wedding ring. Few knew the truth. That ring had once belonged to her mother, secretly taken and reshaped by David. Her voice trembled with quiet pleading. "Dad, please, don't turn my first night as a wife into a nightmare." David smiled, but his eyes were as cold as steel. He tapped the iPad screen and spoke with cutting derision. "Wouldn't you rather replace those dusty old photographs with some fresh wedding portraits? What good is clinging to memories that are already dead?" My chest tightened. Margaret, my beloved wife, had passed away in that very house. Every photograph, every door frame, every creaking stair still carried her presence. It wasn't a valuable asset, as David so casually called it. It was memory. It was soul. It was family. Emily's eyes wavered. She didn't yet know that just days before the wedding, David had quietly moved some of his personal belongings into my house, as if staking his claim. I even suspected he had slipped a property authorization into their marriage paperwork, a document my daughter might have signed without realizing. I straightened in my seat and met my son-in-law's gaze. "I can buy you tickets for the honeymoon, but the house stays, and if you think I'm too old to defend it—" I paused, my voice sharpening like steel. "Then you've never truly known me." The air froze. Emily lowered her face, tears shimmering beneath the harsh white lights. David leaned back, his grin wide but fragile, and in his eyes I caught a glimpse of something chilling, the calculating glint of a man who had planned this moment for a long time, only to find himself challenged from the very first move. David Cole's voice still echoed behind me as I walked away. "We'll talk again later, Bill, once you've thought this through." His words cut like the edge of a blade, cold, assured, deliberately unfinished. As the banquet hall doors closed, the warmth of that luxury seemed to cling to my back, choking each breath. Every step carried me farther from Emily's pleading, uncertain eyes, and from David's smooth, predatory smile. The elevator carried me up to the 23rd floor, where my private suite awaited. I had taken it for a few nights, since the house I had built brick by brick, was now, ironically, being given to Emily and David after their wedding. What bitter irony. Me, the man who raised those walls, exiled to a hotel room, as if I no longer had a place in my own life. The door clicked shut behind me, leaving me alone in the dim light. Outside, nearly 4 a.m., a spring rain drizzled against the glass, streaking the window with crooked lines like the careless strokes of ink. The room lay silent, except for the unopened suitcase and the cold weight of the hotel key in my pocket. I sat down, pulling from my bag an old pocket watch Margaret Maggie Carter's gift on our 20th anniversary. Its steady ticking felt like the sound of control slipping through my hands. Beside it lay a folded letter, written in her fragile hand during her final days, tucked carefully inside a leather journal. Her handwriting trembled, yet carried firm resolve. Never let anyone else decide the fate of what you built with your own hands. I clenched my teeth, replaying the images of the wedding reception just hours earlier. $15,000 for the celebration band, flowers, banquet hall, every expense covered by me, all for Emily's happiness. And only 2 days later, David had the audacity to reach for my house, but he never asked. He never bargained. He declared. As if the house had already been coded into his plan, and I was nothing more than excess, a line of script to be deleted from the system he was rewriting. I grabbed my phone, opening the home security app. My heart pounded as the camera feed flickered on David, lingering in my study the night before. He stood at my bookshelf, hand brushing the drawer where I had long kept my most important documents. I scrolled to my contacts, hovering over the number of Thomas Reed, Margaret's old attorney. My finger paused above the call button, then fell away. Instead, I drafted a message. Thomas, we need to meet urgently. David Cole may not be who we think he island. I hesitated, then deleted it. Returning to the desk, I pulled out the old mortgage files and opened my laptop. Numbers lit up the screen. The house, worth roughly $400,000, maybe more. Assets, insurance, retirement savings, all the product of a lifetime's labor. I once shared these details with David, proud of my stability, hoping he'd appreciate that Emily came from a secure family. But now I realized those friendly questions had been reconnaissance. How's the property tax bill? This neighborhood must be appreciating fast, right? Ever thought of what to do with the extra space? Every one of those conversations now rang in my ears like the footfalls of a hunter. I tried searching his name online. Nothing credible appeared. No company tied to him. Only fragments. A wedding photo on social media revealed one of his friends, a man later identified as a former business partner, sued for financial fraud. The phone number David used? A prepaid line, activated only months before the wedding. I picked up a framed photo of Emily at age 5, her innocent smile, those clear bright eyes. I placed it beside her recent wedding portrait, the same smile, the same pose, but the light in her eyes had shifted. A painful symmetry, a cruel loop. I reopened Margaret's will and traced each line slowly, the ink almost whispering her presence into the room. Outside, the rain intensified, tapping harder on the glass, like an omen of the storm that was fast approaching. And in that heavy silence, I whispered to myself, David Cole, who are you really? Early Saturday morning, a heavy fog draped the suburban street like a cold gray shroud. After a night of rain, the front lawn was still soaked, and my tires hissed softly against the wet pavement as I pulled into the driveway. On the passenger seat, a canvas bag sagged under the weight of tomatoes, bread, and a bottle of homemade wine from the farmer's market, its paper wrapping damp from the storm. As I stepped out of the car, Jack Turner emerged from his garage, a steaming cup of coffee in one hand. His faded military jacket, frayed at the shoulders, made him look like a man who had stepped out of another battlefield. In his other hand, the crackling voice of an old police radio sputtered with static, a habit Jack had never abandoned since leaving the force. He walked briskly toward me, voice lowered but firm. Bill, there's something, and I can't keep it to myself any longer. I froze, setting the grocery bag on the mud-smeared hood of my car, my eyes instinctively drifting toward the house, the place I no longer felt was fully my own. Jack spoke slowly, each word hitting like a hammer against my chest. Yesterday, David brought a stranger into your house. This wasn't a guest. From the way he carried himself, The way he spoke, he was no visitor, more like a banker or a broker. Mont Blanc briefcase in one hand, a laser scanner hooked up to a GPS tablet in the other. A sharp crash split the silence. The wine bottle slipped from my grip and shattered against the concrete. Glass scattered, and the acrid smell of alcohol rose into the damp air. I didn't bend down. I turned my back instead, trying to hide the color draining from my face. What were they doing? My voice came out hoarse, almost broken. They weren't sightseeing, Jack replied, narrowing his eyes. They were working. Precise. Purposeful. Like prepping for a listing. They measured the yard, photographed the foundation, stayed inside for over an hour. I clenched my fists until my nails dug deep into my palms. My breath grew sharp, uneven. He has a key. Jack hesitated, then nodded grimly. Not just a key. I saw David open the safe in your study. He showed that man something, papers maybe. They both laughed, and then shut it quick. Bill, I know I shouldn't have been watching, but... His hand gripped my shoulder firmly, his eyes heavy with unspoken warning. That house isn't just yours anymore. He's laying the groundwork for something much bigger. The wail of a garbage truck echoed down the block. A crow perched on the roof let out a hoarse cry, its dark wings cutting through the fog. From the backyard, the neighbor's dog barked relentlessly, as if it too sensed the unease seeping into the bricks of my home. I turned back to Jack, eyes burning but voice steady, cold. He has the key. He's bringing strangers into my house as if I were already dead. The bag on the hood had collapsed, tomatoes rolling onto the wet cement, bursting against the ground. I didn't move to gather them. I only stood there, staring at the house that once held my life. My memories, my family now looming before me like a silent traitor, keeping secrets I had yet to uncover. My words fell heavy, almost to myself. I thought I still had time to deal with this. Maybe I'm already too late. At 2:30 a.m., the city slumbered under a curtain of drizzle. In the temporary apartment I had rented near downtown, a place as cold and sterile as a hospital waiting room, there was little more than a wooden desk, a dim yellow lamp, and an aging Dell laptop humming faintly as its fan wheezed. The hard drive light blinked like a nervous heartbeat, ready to confess truths I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I sank into the chair, which squealed in protest beneath my weight. I opened Chrome. No need to search through tabs. The history had already synced. David Cole had forgotten to log out. The words glared back at me, each one striking my chest like a hammer blow. Real estate appraisal services, Chicago suburbs, sell house fast, cash buyers, property transfer procedure, power of attorney Illinois, senior homeowner assistance program, mobile notary, house documents. He wasn't breaking in with drills or shattered glass. He was walking through the front door, smiling, carrying the title of son-in-law, and wearing the wedding ring I had paid for. I clicked through the links: professional appraisers, fast cash home buying firms, legal offices specializing in elder property transfers. It wasn't random. It was a roadmap, a script for legitimizing theft. On the desk, my hand brushed against a USB drive labeled Margaret. It felt impossibly heavy, as though Maggie herself were inside it. I set it back down, swallowing hard, and pulled my chair closer to the blue glow of the screen. My phone buzzed. An iMessage notification lit up with the wedding photo of Emily and David, smiling radiantly. "Dad, I'm worried. David says you've been upset. Maybe tonight we should have a family Zoom call?" I marked it as read and silenced the notifications. Another conversation, no doubt this time with appraisals, legal references, and honeyed words. He would call it a reasonable proposal. I turned the lamp up a notch and dragged a whiteboard from the corner. With a marker, I scrawled a list of leads. Appraiser, laser scanner plus GPS tablet. Browser history, Chrome sync, David still logged in. Company name Sell Fast, cash buyers. Timeline of David entering the house. Safe. Jack saw him open it. I opened Signal. No phone calls this time. Encrypted only. The line clicked, and a steady, professional voice answered. Law offices of Thomas Reed. This is Melissa Grant. Melissa, this is William Carter. Urgent. One moment I'll connect you. I paced as the data on the screen glowed like living evidence. I felt like a reluctant witness to an assassination, except the victim was my dignity and my home. The weapon wasn't a knife, it was browser history. Thomas came on the line, his voice momentarily faltering before regaining its measured tone. Bill, Melissa tells me this is about fraud, and your son-in-law? David Cole. I ground out his name. He's planning to take my house. I have the evidence. He's researched every legal loophole. Silence, followed by rapid typing. Bill, it's not 3 cases like I once tracked. It's 6, and I fear that's only the surface. You mean, he's done this before? A repeating pattern, targeting men in their 60s or 70s, recently widowed, with adult children under financial strain. He marries in, earns trust, then exploits power of attorney and corrupt notaries to siphon assets. One victim took his own life after losing everything, abandoned by his daughter who believed the son-in-law over him. I gripped the edge of the desk, holding myself steady. My vision blurred, but my mind was ice clear, as though doused in freezing water. What do I do right now? Do not sign anything. Don't hand over documents. Don't let him help with legal matters. Stay calm. Tomorrow morning, come to my office. Bring the deed, Margaret's will, insurance papers, bank statements, everything tied to the house. My eyes drifted back to the USB labeled Margaret. Inside were photos, scanned documents, and letters she had written in her final days. Thomas, he's already been in my study. Jack saw him open the safe. And the other night, a man was scanning the foundation, photographing everything. The Chrome history shows he's preparing every legal avenue. That's his method: professional appraisal, falsified transfers, dirty notaries. Bill, you're still in the window before they strike the final pen. This is your narrowest, most crucial moment. His voice dropped, sharp as a blade. Be careful around him. If he senses, he'll accelerate. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. On the whiteboard I circled one word: time. Then another: Emily. I ended the call. The room fell silent except for the rain tapping the window. Outside, a street lamp flickered, as if some unseen eye were watching. I scrolled further down the browser history. There it was. Cleaning service. Prepare house before listing. He had already pictured a for sale sign planted in the lawn I had bled for. I exhaled slowly, snapping the marker's cap shut. Years ago, I built that house with my bare hands, mortar, and faith. Now, I would defend it with records, evidence, and law. I once thought myself a careful planner, but this time, I had let a predator walk through my door disguised as family. He thought I was prey. His mistake was choosing the wrong man. I pulled my suitcase close, sliding documents into a waterproof folder and placing the Margaret USB on top. On the whiteboard, I wrote one final line, bold and final. Tomorrow, counterattack, no compromise, end the game. Close to 2 a.m., the house lay in silence after a heavy rain, swallowing the world outside. Only the faint gold of the living room lamp spilled across the carpet, stretching my shadow long and jagged like a scar. I walked barefoot, holding a cup of tea gone cold. The damp smell of rain mingled with old wood, making every breath feel heavier. I couldn't sleep. 3 days of sitting at the computer, piecing together evidence against David Cole, had drained my patience. Restless, I wandered, tidying the space. Ironic, really. Here I was, straightening the home I had built with my own hands, all while preparing to defend it from the man sleeping upstairs with my daughter. As I bent to slide the coffee table aside, a faint smell of heated plastic reached me. My first thought, a smoke detector malfunction? I swept my phone flashlight across the room. Then I saw it a glint, sharp as a needle prick. Beneath the table's base, a pin-sized lens blinked faintly red with infrared light. My heart stumbled. Not dust, not a stray wire, an eye. I dropped to the floor, face close. A micro camera, wired with strands no thicker than hair. It had been concealed perfectly, its blind spot covered by Margaret Maggie Carter's porcelain bowl, the one David had accidentally cracked last week. Placed just so, it turned the camera into part of the shadow. I whispered to myself, he dared to bring the enemy's eyes into the heart of my home. This was no longer a house. It was a battlefield he had constructed. The very corner where Maggie once sat reading, where I once tuned in to the radio, now recording me, second by second. Sickening. I retrieved a box cutter from the drawer, carefully sliced the tape, pinned the device with my thumb, and pulled it out. Professional grade, motion sensor, infrared, micro SD slot, optimized for low light, crystal clear audio. I steadied my breath. This was evidence. I powered up the old Dell laptop on the armchair, slid in the card, and connected a black external drive secured with a 4-digit pin. The machine buzzed, the drive light blinking like a pulse awaiting judgment. A folder appeared. 69 video files, time-stamped, beginning the 3rd day after David had moved in. I opened the first. The shaky frame revealed gloved hands adjusting the lens, testing the sound. No face, precise, clinical, like a surgeon. My throat went dry. The next files captured the mundane. Footsteps. Doors creaking open. The faint echo of laughter. Arrogant. Distant. As though whoever planted the device felt untouchably safe. My morning rituals, private calls, every movement, all preserved in cold, detached clarity. Then I clicked File 38. A chill froze my spine. The living room appeared on screen. I wasn't home out at the market. David entered, moving with the ease of an owner. He switched his phone to speaker. "Harold, you hear me? Next Friday, it's done. All the paperwork is ready. The old man's still busy checking his emails." He smirked. "I even know the Wi-Fi password." A raspy voice on the other end replied, "You sure? Remember Denver? That old guy backed out at the last second." David laughed, a sound, sharp and dry, like nails driven into wood. "Not this time. I've got emotional leverage as daughter. The old man trusts me completely. Before month's end, the house is ours. The notary will clear it all." I stopped the video. The living room around me was dead silent, but in my mind thunder roared. His voice, his words. Naked confession. I pressed play again. David's voice rang clearer, bolder. "Harold Benton, don't slip. He's just like the others, proud, independent, but gullible in the end. Hell, he even paid 15 grand for our wedding. Everything fits perfectly." Harold replied coolly, "My seal is clean. Just handle the signature." "Handled," David said, smug as if checkmating his opponent. "All I need is for him to breathe at the right moment, and I'll slide the pen into his hand." Heat burned in my eyes, but my hand stayed steady, working like a technician. I copied the files, triplicated them, encrypted at 256-bit, checked the hash, and exported the keyframes with notes. In my document I typed, File 38, Confession, 321, Speakerphone, Names Harold Benton, Content, Timing, Process, Wi-Fi password, Plan completion next Friday. As the progress bar crawled forward, I looked up. On the shelf, Emily's wedding portrait smiled, perfectly developed and framed by David himself. My voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. "She will never believe it, but I have to save her, even if she hates me forever." The next files revealed more. Harold coaching David through the power of attorney script, naming mobile notary, citing appointment codes. Their whole scheme exposed: select the target, map his habits, exploit his trust, legitimize forged signatures, transfer, renovate, list. David thought the camera was his advantage, tracking my routines, calls, hiding places. His fatal mistake: letting his spy device become my witness. I locked the data, mirrored it onto a backup drive, added a fresh layer of encryption. Finished, I pulled on my coat, slipped the hard drive into a waterproof pouch, and grabbed my car keys. Not yet the police. I needed strategy, timing, credible witnesses. Detective Laura Hayes, recommended by Thomas Reed, opened her office at 8, but the hallway lights came on at 5. I would be waiting outside her door. I killed the lamp. Darkness reclaimed the room, but it no longer felt suffocating. At the doorway, I looked back once more. This was my home, where I carried Maggie across the threshold, where Emily took her first steps, where David believed he could build scaffolds of deception to steal everything under the guise of law and a smile. I closed the door behind me, whispering the sentence like a verdict. Tomorrow, I'm done defending. I attack. David Cole's arrogance would be the very thing that destroyed him. The sublevel of the Cook County Courthouse had no nameplate, just a gray steel door with a pin pad and badge scanner. I set my water-resistant briefcase combination locked onto the X-ray belt. The door clicked, opening into a world of cold blue light, sound-dampening panels, and an entire wall of tiled monitors streaming data on federal fraud suspects. Different air down here, fewer words, more evidence. Mr. Carter? A woman in her 40s stepped forward, badge glinting under the fluorescence. I'm Detective Laura Hayes. Thank you for coming. Her handshake was firm, like a bolt sliding home. I slid the case onto a matte steel table. Inside, everything was indexed. 1. Scene photos. 2. Browser history extractions. 3. Hidden camera audio, divided by video. 4. Witness statements. 5. Financial cross-checks. I spoke slowly, clearly. I spent half my life trusting numbers. The other half? I trust the truth. Hayes paged through each section. Her brow lifted when she reached File 38, Confession 321. 20 minutes passed in the staccato of keystrokes and professional silence. At last, she looked up. This is the most complete file I've seen in 15 years. She pivoted to the investigative console, typing fast. We've tracked David Cole for 8 months across 3 states. At least 12 cases, and likely more. 12? I asked. How that many? He's good. Victims are ashamed. Evidence is thin. Until today. A map flared with red pins across Illinois, Colorado, and Arizona. Every pin, a fallen roofline. Hayes leaned in. Her voice shifted to strategy. You can be the key, but we'll need a controlled sting, your direct cooperation, normal behavior, so he keeps performing. We record him committing the crime. You want him thinking he's winning? Right up until the proof is undeniable. She slid a plain silver ring toward me. Panic trigger under the band. Encrypted beacon. 1 press. Red priority. Response time. Under 30 seconds. She placed a second device in my palm, no larger than a candy. Bone conduction earpiece. Invisible. Direct line to command. And my safety? 3 layers of cover. You'll see. 8 a.m. the next morning. 3 black, fingerprint-locked cases slid from the trunk of an unmarked car. 6 officers in neutral uniforms, barcode patches, no names filed into my house, wearing AR glasses, each with a personalized anti-spoof QR tag. Hayes took point, conducting the scene with a fingertip. 4 hours for install, then rehearsal. They moved like a surgical team. Micro cameras nested behind picture frames, switch plates, and cabinet lips. Directional mics hidden in decorative molding, auto-filtering ambient noise. Encrypted storage mounted under the desk. Outside, the command van tucked behind the trees. A portable gate choked the neighborhood's outbound signal. David wouldn't be able to push data out. Next door, relatives dropped by undercover officers with glasses cams, while faux birdhouses on rooftops hid remote PTZ lenses. Hayes handed me a tablet streaming every angle. Network live. Audio clean. If needed, we'll talk in your ear. I nodded. Across the street, Jack Turner scratched his ear, our quiet signal. He was in position. Then rehearsal. The living room became a VR stage. David's figure reconstructed from video. The height, the distance, even that small, smug curl of his lip, perfect. A psychologist observed from the hall, noting my breathing and pupil dilation. Scenario 1. Soft persuasion. Bill, let's just sign a temporary transfer. David's synthetic voice floated in. I'm not interested in any transfer, I answered, gaze steady as trained. Good, Hayes murmured in my ear. Make him explain. We stacked deceptive practice counts. Scenario 2. Intimidation. The projection leaned in. You're not well. Let me manage things. I drew a breath, rested a hand on the chair arm, the grounding cue the psychologist had taught me. I manage myself. You lower your tone. We even ran the failure branch. He snaps, throws an envelope. The earpiece crackled. Safe retreat, press the ring if he crosses the line. I tapped a test press. On the command screen, Alabama PHA divided by Bravo divided by Charlie lit up 3 response vectors ready to move. 3 ppm. Final checks. Mr. Carter, do you read? Crystal clear. Good. Units in adjacent houses are set. Signal gate is active. Birdhouse 2 is live. From the curb, the place looked like the same old house. Inside, it was a labyrinth of signals. I slid the ring onto my left hand, feeling the cool rim like tempered resolve. Shetidan. A short-term rental Mercedes glided into the driveway. Dark gray suit, sunglasses. A smile like velvet over a blade. David Cole stepped out carrying a manila envelope. He adjusted his cuff, checked his reflection habits of a man who believes he can't lose. Bring the system to full, Hayes said calmly in my ear. No hard eye contact over 3 seconds. Let him lead himself into the act. The doorbell chimed. I unlatched the lock. David tilted his head. A chill fragrance spilled over the threshold. Bill, he said, voice sweet as flypaper. Here's the final draft. After today, it all belongs to the family. I smiled for the first time since the nightmare began. Yes, but not the family you have in mind. Across the street, a single leaf quivered my sign that ALPHA had the target boxed. In my ear, Hayes spoke like reading a signed sentence. The trap has flipped. I stepped back half a pace, giving him room to enter the living room, now a sealed stage. A lens flickered, almost imperceptible. The mics drank in every breath. I rested my hand on the table's edge right above the panic switch. The conversation he was about to have would be the last one he held as a free man. The sky was heavy, drizzle tapping faintly against the glass. Cold gray light seeped through the wide kitchen windows, painting the wooden table at the center of the open-plan room in a sheen of steel. Today, that table would serve as the operating table of justice. I straightened the collar of my ash-gray sweater, adjusted the discreet-faced watch on my wrist, and listened as Detective Laura Hayes's steady voice came through the bone conduction earpiece. All units in position, recording system stable. If needed, press the watch face. The doorbell rang precisely at 2 p.m. A subtle vibration on my wrist confirmed the red priority connection was live. Through rain-slicked glass, I watched David Cole step out of a rented Mercedes light-colored suit, hair slicked with gel, one arm carrying a premium bottle of wine, the other a golden envelope. Beside him walked Harold Benton, dark trench coat, thin-rimmed glasses, briefcase with a coated lock, a financial assassin cloaked as a notary. I opened the door, my tone calm, neither warm nor cold. Right on time, and I see you didn't come alone. David smiled that smile which had deceived so many. Bill, today is a milestone. Allow me to introduce Mr. Harold Benton, a licensed notary. One door closes, another opens. For all of us, Harold's handshake was cold, slick, like the touch of a water snake. He tilted his head, voice smooth. A pleasure, Mr. Carter. David has told me much about your unique circumstances. They set the wine on the table with ceremonial flair, then unfurled the paperwork. Above us, a hanging bell swayed gently in its hollow, a hidden camera, picture frames, lamp fixtures, even my granddaughter's stuffed dog each carried an eye. David spread the documents like a dealer fanning cards, his smile frozen in place. Wonderful news, Bill. The house has already been sold above market value. You'll be moving to an upscale retirement community. Everything's arranged. I studied the pages as if examining a technical blueprint, lines clean, seals sharp, signatures forged to perfection. I lifted one, angling it in the gray light. Interesting. And just who did you sell my soul to? Harold slid forward the transfer confirmation, voice dripping with practiced pity. Elderly men often forget important details. Here are your signatures and consent, fully notarized. In my ear, Hayes whispered, "Hold steady. Let them reveal the process." I set the paper down, resting my hand on the table edge just above the alarm switch. My memory hasn't failed enough to forget selling my own soul. Perhaps we should stop by the Cook County offices just to check. David's smile faltered for half a beat. "What would you do that for, Bill?" "They're very interested in Phoenix, Denver, and 3 other cities of yours, David. They're very 1762 6C. The temperature in the room dropped. Harold's eyes darted for an exit. David shot to his feet, papers scattering. "You're raving, Harold. Tell him everything here is perfectly legal." Harold swallowed hard. "You said this was clean business." I tilted my head, my tone as precise as a caliper reading. "Detective Laura Hayes currently holds 47 recordings, including one of you both discussing notary seals." In my ear, counting down, 3, 2, 1. The house lights shifted from warm amber to cold white. The back door burst open. Officers swept in from both sides. Out in the yard, a disguised birdhouse pivoted slightly, its lens locking onto David's face. Hayes entered through the front, coat open, badge gleaming, warrant in hand. "David Cole, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, elder exploitation, conspiracy, and federal racketeering. Case files: IL 472, CO 219, AZ 803, with all supporting exhibits." David froze in the center of the open kitchen, still clutching the golden envelope like a man clinging to a locked door. "This is insane. Bill, tell them this is family business." I didn't rise. I only looked at him, my voice flat as the steel I'd shaped all my life. "You thought this was a transaction. In truth, you just walked into an indictment." I'll cooperate." Harold's hands shot up, voice breaking. "I know his next targets." Hayes gave the faintest nod, eyes never leaving the warrant. "Mr. Harold Benton, you are also under arrest. Full cooperation may affect sentencing." David lunged for the papers, but 2 officers pinned him before he touched them. Gloved hands swept the documents into evidence bags. Rain hammered harder against the glass, while outside the signal gate held firm, invisible, and unyielding. Tires screeched at the curb. The door burst open. Emily stumbled inside, hair wet, eyes red. She looked from the cuffs, to me, then to David. I said nothing. Just a quiet nod, the only greeting of a father standing in the fire, shielding his daughter from the flames. Local reporters shouted from beyond the gate, cameras flashing. "Mr. Carter, how did you uncover this scheme?" I didn't face them. 40 years as an engineer taught me to check the system. When one parameter doesn't add up, you test until you touch the truth. Hayes turned back, holding the door. Her voice softened. "Today's arrest closes files in 5 states. You saved dozens of families. And what comes next? Trial in 8 weeks. With today's evidence, conviction is nearly certain." Officers led David through the threshold. He glanced back, panic burning, eyes dropping to the wooden table once his launch pad, now his ruin. My thumb brushed the face of the watch, the trigger that turned the tide before lowering my hand. The rain eased. Neighbors gathered under porches. Across the street, Jack Turner folded his arms and gave a subtle nod. Emily stood, trembling, lips parted with no words. I turned away, letting Hayes speak with her. That was a conversation tonight I did not want to win, only to leave my daughter a path home. As the last squad car disappeared beyond the trees, the open kitchen was only a kitchen again, no longer a stage. I stood alone, listening to rain drip from the eaves, and understood. He once thought me a weary old man, but a man who built a life with his own hands cannot be toppled by a single lie. Tonight, I would sleep not because the house was safe, but because faith in justice had been restored. A foggy morning, barely 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The sky hung gray like a shroud over the Gothic facade of the federal courthouse of Northeast Illinois, stone columns rising high, a dome swallowed by mist, stained glass windows casting faint ribbons of color onto the granite steps. I climbed each step carrying the briefcase that had exposed David Cole's elaborate scheme. At the entrance, Detective Laura Hayes waited, her eyes stern yet warm. "You're not just closing your own chapter today," she said softly. "You're closing the nightmare for many others." "More than ready," I answered, feeling the weight of justice in the handle of the case. The grand courtroom, dark oak walls, vaulted ceilings, beams of colored light filtering through glass, was packed with reporters, law students, and victims of the past. David sat at the defense table in an orange prison uniform. The arrogance that once froze every room had rotted away, leaving only hollow eyes. Beside him, Harold Benton in gray inmate clothes, head bowed. Emily sat quietly in the witness section, her hair cut short, plain white blouse, no makeup, a new simplicity, a decisive break from the past. When our eyes met, she smiled the same smile I remembered from when she was 5 years old, proud after taking off her training wheels for the first time. Judge Henry Whitman struck the gavel, his voice resonating through the wood-paneled chamber. "Members of the jury, today we hear the case of the defendant, David Cole, charged with federal fraud, forgery, elder exploitation, and conspiracy." The prosecutor laid out the case like wiring a circuit. 12 victims across 5 states, over $2 million siphoned away. A predatory model built on romance and forged documents sustained for 3 years. "The evidence will show," he concluded, "that David Cole was no opportunist, but a calculated predator, a system built to crush families for profit." The defense lawyer tried to slam the brakes. "My client was manipulated, he was not the mastermind." I nearly laughed. The very system that drove him here was supposedly someone else's fault. The trial flowed like a set of physical laws. Clara Dominguez from Phoenix, her voice breaking, recounted the home she'd lost after 40 years. Daniel Wu from Denver described the heart attack he suffered after being thrown onto the street. Each story, a carbon copy, same author, same method. Then the LED screen dropped. Subtitles scrolled across as the audio from David's own hidden spy device played aloud. "The old man trusts me completely. By the end of the month, the house will be ours." The room froze, as if swallowing stone. David turned away, his hand twitching under the table. No place left to hide. "Mr. Carter," the prosecutor called, "please take the stand." I stepped forward, the sighs of broken families behind me. "Tell us about the 25th of March. The defendant came to my home with forged documents, claiming I had sold the house, demanding I leave immediately, threatening to send me to a nursing home if I refused." "And how did you respond?" "I proposed we go straight to the authorities, where I had already filed evidence after 3 weeks of systematic investigation." The defense lawyer raised an eyebrow. Could this have been a family misunderstanding? I met his gaze, voice flat as a blueprint. "I've been an engineer my entire life. Systems don't lie. When every link fails, it's not an accident. It's a deliberate mechanism of destruction." A ripple of laughter broke across the gallery. Even the judge had to suppress a smile. Then Harold Benton was called. He turned toward the victim's bench, eyes rimmed red. "I'm sorry. I should have stopped long ago." He listed the accomplices, the forged notary appointments, the way they cared for targets before stripping them bare. Then, in a hushed voice, "I want to see a pastor after sentencing." 2 days of testimony. The jury left. Less than 3 hours later, they returned swift and unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Judge Whitman rose, his sentence falling like a steel beam. The defendant exploited love, family, and law itself to mask a chain of immoral acts. This court sentences him to 12 years in federal prison, with no parole for the first 8 and restitution to all victims. 8. David crumpled as the cuffs snapped shut. The predator who once stood in my kitchen threatening to exile me was now just another convict, head bowed. Outside, the fog had thinned. Emily ran into my arms, her white shirt carrying the scent of sunlight. "You saved me by shattering my illusions at exactly the right time. Thank you for choosing truth over comfort." "You once loved a man who deceived many," I said. "That proves your heart was kind, not that your judgment was weak." Hayes clasped my hand, her eyes showing the weary relief of victory. "This case will be studied in training. You've shown that age isn't weakness, it's wisdom." "What's next, Dad?" Emily asked, as we descended the granite steps. I thought of public talks on elder fraud, of rebuilding trust in families torn apart. "Justice isn't the end," I said. "It's the beginning so we can live on, lighter in spirit, whole in heart." That evening, back on the porch, we held cups of hot tea in silence, watching the sunset gild the glass panes in gold. No hidden cameras, no predatory whispers, only the sound of birds and the warmth of home. At the edge of the lawn, a small wooden sign had been planted. "Where once there was conspiracy, now begins renewal." If you have ever witnessed or endured something similar, share your story in the comments below. Leave the message, "I choose truth and justice," to declare that you too stand on the side of light. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next powerful and inspiring stories. And if you want to know what happens after this trial, yes, another twist may be waiting, make sure to watch the video right below the screen. One more chapter is yet to be revealed.